Chapter 29 Visitations. The years passed like molasses, suffocating and formless. We all labored under their sluggishness, but no one suffered more than Arjun. Yudhishthir had his morality to keep himself occupied. Nakul and Sahadev their fascination with the beasts of the forest to divert them, and Bhim his love for me that held him fast in its coils like the mythic Ajagar. But Quicksilver Arjun, who wanted fame more than anything in the world, who saw himself less as husband or brother or son than as hero, chafed under the restrictions Yudhishthir's promise had placed on him. He longed to battle the Kauravas and win back his honor, but he knew he couldn't, not until our years of banishment were done. Because he couldn't avenge me, he avoided me, my tangled hair, my accusing sighs, my pepper-hot tongue. From the beginning our relationship had been troubled, with him blaming me for what his mother had ordered, my marriage to his brothers. But in the palace of illusions, for a blessed, magical time, we had been at peace, both of us busy with things we loved. He had been the commander of the city, in charge of its security. He had travelled to the edges of the kingdom to make sure things were safe. In between, he had tournaments to perform in and his other wives to visit. Now, once again, submerged as we were in the sameness of our days, the tensions surfaced. I should have read the signs, should have softened my ways, but I was caught in the coils of my own serpent, and no less blind than Dhritarashtra. Arjun began to spend longer hours in the forest by himself. He said it was for hunting, but more and more he would return empty-handed with a distracted frown. And one morning he left us. He had a reason, of course, the impending war, for which he needed to improve his battle skills and learn new techniques. And how could he do that, hemmed in by our rusting existence? Time gnaws on me, he told Yudhishthir. I fear I will disintegrate before the war even begins. He decided to go to the mountains of Himavan and try, through penance, to please Shiva. He would ask him for Pasupat, the divine astra that would make him invincible. Once I have the Pasupat, he said, Karna is a dead man. When I heard that, the blood fled from my face. My knees buckled and I fell to the ground. I, who hadn't weakened so, even at the moment of my great insult in Duryodhan's court. My husbands bustled around me. Yudhishthir lifted my head onto his lap. Bhim splashed water on my face. The twins fanned me. A flattered Arjun took my hands in his, even though it was not his ear as my husband, in a rare gesture of affection. Don't worry, he said. I go so that, when the time comes, I can restore your honor." His words, if not totally honest about his motives, were true enough. Wish me Godspeed. Why did I hesitate? My husbands thought I was too overcome with fear for Arjun to speak. They considered it sweet and womanly, and assured me he would be in no danger. He was, after all, the world's greatest warrior, and his father Indra would surely be keeping an eye out for him. Why was my heart so weak, so unreasonable? After all that had transpired, why should I care what happened to a man with ancient eyes? Wasn't he my enemy, the deadly rival of this man who was willing to risk his life to avenge mine? My folly angered me, but I couldn't shake it off. To stop the voices, both inner and outer, I said, "May you be successful. May you return safely with your heart's desire." But my voice faltered. Perhaps that is why Arjun would have so much trouble on his journey. On Indrakila mountain, where the air is like crystal, Arjun meditated and prayed to Shiva, but Shiva did not answer. Instead, a wild boar charged at him from a copse. Arjun lifted the Gandiva bow, but as he shot, a different arrow flew through the air and struck the boar dead. Enraged by this encroachment, Arjun turned to find a man dressed in skins. He didn't seem intimidated by Arjun's threats. When Arjun, in his anger, shot at him, all his arrows, even his divine astras, fell useless at the hunter's feet, whereas each arrow of the hunter found its target. There I was, bleeding, while the hunter mocked me. Arjun would tell us later, his voice conveying his astonished outrage. I, who hadn't been touched by an arrow since I completed my studies with Drona. I prayed to Shiva for help, but nothing happened. My heart sank. Dispirited, he made a garland from wildflowers and offered it to an earthen image of the god in a final attempt to please him. But when he opened his eyes, the garland was gone. I was sure the god had abandoned me, he said. Then I saw the garland. It was around the neck of the hunter, who glowed with a golden light. Understanding Shiva's play, he fell at his feet. The god embraced him and gave him the dreaded Pasupat, asking only that he use it in righteous war. But would the war still be righteous when Arjun shot the Astra at Karna? Or had it swerved darkly a long time before? The blood of Abhimanyu had soaked the earth of Kurukshetra by then. Bhishma had been made to give away the secret of his death. And Drona had been overcome, not by my brother's valor, but by a lie. Enveloped in triumph, giddy with the god's presence, Arjun did not suspect any of this. "Yes," he cried, raising his chin in that way he had, full of self-belief. Did Chitragupta, keeper of the divine books, record his promise, smiling his secret, crooked smile at the vanity of humans? Is that why Arjun, too, would fall on the mountain when we went on our final journey? There was more to Arjun's story. How Indra and the other gods appeared, promising him more astras to be given when the war began. How they took him up to Indra's palace, where he sat by the king god on the same throne, enjoying celestial music and dance. I wondered if his forefathers were there, but I knew better than to ask. How the celestial dancer Urvasi fell in love with him and asked him to satisfy her desire. He refused. He made sure to catch my eye while narrating this part. She cursed him. As a result, he would have to spend a year of his life as a eunuch. Fortunately, his father interceded. He couldn't nullify the curse, but at least Arjun could choose the year when it would happen. There were things Arjun kept to himself. Isn't it thus with all stories, even this one I'm telling? But when you share a man's pillow, his dreams seep into you. And so I knew. The very first night he was there, Urvashi came to him, dressed only in a mantle of clouds. She entered his bedroom and took him by the hand. "I burn for you," she said. "Put an end to my suffering." Arjun turned from her, covering his ears. "You are the beloved of Pururava, my ancestor," he said, "and thus like a mother to me." Urvasi smiled at the folly of his words. "The rules that bind earthly woman do not bind us," she said. "While Pururava lived, I was faithful to him, but he has been dust for many ages, and I am free to choose the man I want. Come, let us not waste time." Her face shone like the moon. Her breasts were pearly with the sweat of passion. The sight of her navel alone would have made kings forsake their kingdoms. What gave Arjun the power to resist her? Earlier I'd thought that it was for my sake. Oh, vanity! Now in my dream I knew the truth. Arjun was determined to show the gods that he was stronger than their strongest enchantment, a worthy recipient of the astras they had promised him. Against the sharp metallic seduction of instruments of death, what chance did Urvashi have? When Krishna learned that his favorite friend would become a eunuch for a year, he laughed. The more so when Arjun glowered. "Don't you see?" he said. "It's the perfect concealment for your 13th year. Who'd ever suspect the manly Arjun in a skirt and veil, his mighty arms a tinkle with bracelets? You should send a message of special thanks to Urvashi. Narad's always going up there. Maybe he could act as your emissary. No, thank you, said my husband, his manly eyebrows drawing together. Krishna turned to me. Even a curse can be a blessing, Krishna. Don't you agree? I nodded, but warily. He was always trying to convince me that bad luck, particularly ours, was really something else, something better in disguise. Caught between him and Yudhishthir, a woman couldn't even enjoy being miserable. That year, our last in the forest, was filled with divine visitations. Yudhishthir had his own encounter one blazing afternoon beside a lake with a yaksha, an invisible being of power who had already overpowered his brothers. It threatened him with death unless he could provide him with the correct responses to 100 questions. Philosophical questions, however, were Yudhishthir's forte. He forgot the danger that faced him and dived into this game of wits, and won. As a reward, the Yaksha brought his brothers back to life and offered him a boon. I wasn't surprised when Yudhishthir told me what he had asked for. Victory. Not in the upcoming battle, but against the 6 inner enemies that plague us all: lust, anger, greed, ignorance, arrogance, and envy. But his real reward was that for weeks afterward he got to ask us the Yaksha's questions, and to provide us triumphantly with the answers when we failed. Though I professed annoyance at this catechism, I secretly enjoyed it. What is more numerous than the grass? The thoughts that rise in the mind of man. Who is truly wealthy? That man to whom the agreeable and disagreeable, wealth and woe, past and future, are the same. What is the most wondrous thing on earth? Each day countless humans enter the temple of death, yet the ones left behind continue to live as though they were immortal. In bed with Arjun, I searched for that part of his mind where he had stored his memory of Shiva, but when I finally found it, there was only an ocean of light in which I longed to dissolve but could not. I think I was most envious of him then. He had been in the presence of a great and blissful mystery. He had glimpsed the truth of existence that extended beyond this oscillating world of pleasure and sorrow. I lay awake all night, my soul hungering to know what he had known. Once I complained to Krishna, "Why don't the gods appear to me? Is it because I am a woman?" "You have the drollest of notions," Krishna laughed. "Why do you think that should matter to the gods, who are beyond gender?" I wanted to ask if that were true, why our scriptures were filled with tales concerning the marriage of gods and goddesses. But I had a more urgent question. Having embraced God, how could Arjun still care about gaining astras, no matter how powerful they were? If I'd been in his place, I wouldn't have wanted anything else. Krishna put his arm around my shoulders in that good-natured way he had. Wouldn't you, Sakhi? That was what he had taken to calling me of late. Sakhi, dearest companion. I liked the appellation, though sometimes I suspected he used it facetiously. Then you're a lot wiser than most of us. For a time a smile flitted over his lips, as though he were privy to a joke no one else knew.